Hi guys, because Reform UK and to a lesser extent Conservative MPs are using language like military-age young men to describe asylum seekers crossing the channel in small boats, of course members of the public are going to be convinced that Britain is at war. At war with who, I don't know. But unfortunately, it results in questions like this from members of the audience. Have a listen to this.
Hello. Right, so what I would like to know is that if this was 1942 and we had the amount of people that we currently have coming across the channel in small boats, we would not have hesitated to deploy the Navy and to line our shores with soldiers to protect us, to protect the country and to protect the people in the country. Why are we not doing that and sending these boats back, redirecting them back to the countries that they are coming from, which is a safe country, as has been stated, France?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so why are we not acting as if we're engaging in a war? Because the UK is not at war. That's the reason. It's not a war situation. If Britain was being invaded by a foreign power, then yes, you would use the Navy to defend the nation. But Britain is not being invaded by a foreign power. And this whole thing, well, why don't we just use the Navy to send people back to the country they came from? No, they didn't come from France. They came through France in the same way as they came through Germany, they came through Italy, they came through Libya, in many cases, or from the other side of Europe. They didn't come from France. They're not French citizens. And as we know, there's no obligation on people to claim asylum in France. Because if the obligation was that you have to claim asylum in the first safe country, then people from Syria would be forced to claim asylum in Turkey. And then what do you think would happen in Turkey? Well, the country would probably collapse if everyone had to claim asylum there. Then what would happen? People would leave Turkey and claim asylum in Greece. And then Greece could potentially be affected, and then people would leave Greece to claim asylum in the next country, and this would continue until you get to France, and then French people will be saying we're claiming asylum in Britain. It's a ridiculous scenario, but that's the reason why it's not necessary for people to claim asylum in the first safe country. They are free to claim asylum where they want, as long as they're processed and their claim is legitimate.
Why are we not returning them?
Okay. Thank you, Diane. Mike Tapp, why aren't we just sending these people back to France and using our military forces to make sure that happens?
Just let this marinate in your mind. We're actually having conversations about using the military to return people to a country they don't want to be in and to a country that doesn't want them. These people do not want to be in France. France doesn't want these people. They want to be in Britain. They have connections to Britain. But the whole argument is, well, how do we force these people back to a country that doesn't want them and they don't want to be in?
Thank you, Diane. It's a solid question and something...
Okay, so this is the difference between a politician and a political commentator. I would have said, that's a very stupid question, and obviously you should stop listening to the likes of Nigel Farage. But of course, he's a politician and he has to welcome the question and commend the question, but it's a pile of crap.
I thought about in depth as well. Look, it's complex. The issue we have here with deploying the Navy is if we put them in our waters, it's not enough. We'd need to be on the shores of France, and that's French territory. So effectively, we'd need to have French permission to be on the shores. So what we're doing at this point is ensuring we're working closely with the French operationally through things like technology, radars, drones, ensuring that they've got enough people on the beach. It's not enough at the moment. It's as simple as that. Otherwise, we wouldn't see the boats crossing as they are. But we are going to put in other measures. We're working hard with the French on returns, for example. And if there's that doubt when you're sat on the beach and you're spending £10,000 to get here, that you could be immediately removed back to France, you're much less likely
but I don't think you're quite answering her question. Why aren't we putting...
Because it's a stupid question. It doesn't make any sense. You can't use the Navy to push back boats. If you sent the Navy into French waters, well, the French would see it as an invasion, and then they would respond with their Navy. It's nonsensical.
Royal Navy.
Well, I did answer the question in that you'd have to have French permission to do that.
We've got to have French permission to put our boats in the channel?
Right. Once you go into French waters, of course you do. The challenge we have with this sort of boat, and I must answer this properly for you, is they're very flimsy dinghies and they collapse on themselves. So if you start to try and turn one round, it collapses. You've then got up to 100 people in the water potentially dying. Okay. It's different in Australia because I have to make that point that they're still hulled, so it makes it much more complex. But it is a top priority to get this sorted.
You can't respond to people with logic who haven't come to their conclusion with logic. The person in the audience there was convinced we just need to put the Navy in the channel and this will stop the boats. But she didn't think any further than that. And she hasn't been convinced, obviously, by the response, because she thinks, well, Nigel and certain Tory MPs are saying all we need to do is put the ships in the channel and this will automatically stop the boats. But if that's what you're thinking, if your thinking doesn't go any further than that, then obviously you're going to believe that. This is how far the discussion has fallen. Completely rational solutions would be, of course, to create safe routes, maybe to set up a processing center in France, if that's possible. There are issues with that. But the logical solutions have gone completely out the window, and instead, politicians have to entertain the idea of, well, we need to be tough. We need to deport people back to France. We need to stop the boats in the channel. There was a caller to LBC who was talking about using nets. Now, it got a bit of a chuckle from Nick Ferrari, but this is the level of thinking people have arrived at because the likes of Nigel Farage have not been challenged. He's able to say, we will just stop the boats. There. From day 1, 2 weeks or whatever, we will stop the boats. And that's all he has to do, because he knows a certain cohort of the population, or the voting public, will jump on that. Finally, somebody like Nigel who will stop the boats. Look at the Labour Party said they'll smash the gangs, but they're not doing anything. The Conservatives said they would stop the boats, and the numbers went up. We know the proper solutions, but it seems very few parties are willing to engage with this rationally. Very few parties are willing to be honest with the public. They'll try and tap dance around and say, well, it's complicated, whatever. No, there are some solutions that will work. If you create safe routes, fewer people will cross the channel in smaller boats because there's no incentive for them to do so. Will it eliminate them altogether? No, of course not. There will always be a small number that will cross. But if you act tough and don't succeed, then people will point the finger of blame at you. They'll say, you failed. You said that you would stop the boats and you didn't. It happened to the Conservatives. And it's going to happen to the Labour Party. This attempt to out Farage is not going to work. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.